We're back with another edition of the Federalist Radio Hour. I'm Emily Jashinsky, Culture Editor here at The Federalist. As always, you can email the show at radio@thefederalist.com. Follow us on Twitter at FDRLST. Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts as well. Today, I'm joined by two guests, by Phelim McAleer and Anne McElhinney, and they are behind the new film, My Son Hunter. You can learn more about that project at mysonhunter.com, but we're going to hear a lot more about the project right now. So welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here.
It's great to be here. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having us on.
Absolutely. So can you tell us a little bit about My Son Hunter, about the film, about the process that you're now embarking upon in terms of just getting it made and getting it out there to the public?
You know, My Son Hunter is a Hunter Biden biopic. You know, it's a movie about the Hunter Biden story and the Joe Biden story and the media cover-up story and the big tech cover-up story. But it's a movie, not a documentary. We want to make that clear. So it will have the exotic locations. It will have the actors. It will...
The beautiful women. I can get to say that, right? The beautiful women, the strip clubs, you know.
Yes.
Let's be honest.
I'm looking forward to location scouting for the strip clubs and the beautiful women. But it's going to be, you know, My Son Hunter is going to be Austin Powers meets King Lear, you know, with a bit of House of Cards thrown in as well. It's going to be that kind of a vibe.
And the West Wing.
The West Wing.
Yes, exactly.
And
I mean, we're the people who did the Gosnell
strip club.
And the strip clubs. We're the people who did the Gosnell movie. So, you know, in the past, the last film we did, we crowdfunded $2.3 million from 30,000 people across the country who recognized that the Gosnell story had been suppressed, that no one, you know, the media hadn't done their job. And it's the same here, exactly the same here. We wouldn't be making this movie if journalists had done their jobs. Obviously, everyone at the Federalist was wonderful, but people at the mainstream media like the New York Times and CNN, NBC, CBS, all these places, you know, were just completely quiet in advance of the election, despite the fact that this amazing bombshell had just dropped into their laps of this laptop. And yet,
in fact, I would argue they were worse than quiet. They actually intimidated other journalists from uncovering the story. Because I remember at the beginning, some journalists did go, "Wow, this is interesting," and they were immediately pounced upon by the blue check marks of Twitter. And then, of course, Twitter came in and banned people from sharing the story. So it's going to be the story that big Hollywood, big media, and big tech don't want you to hear. It's going to be entertaining. It's going to be fun, but it's got a serious intent behind it.
Now, your goal is to get this out in the next 60 days, right? To get it crowdfunded in the next 60 days?
That's correct.
That's right. We find people respond to a time limit. It creates a nightmare scenario for us.
Yes, it's not very pleasant over here, by the way. We're sort of 7 days a week, sort of 24 hours a day, hitting the phones and talking to friends and connecting with new friends.
Yes.
But we started on Tuesday. We just started on Tuesday of this week, and we've raised over $300,000 of the $2.5 million.
In the first 48 hours, we raised $300,000. So, you know, that's a good start, but it's more of a marathon than a sprint, the crowdfunding process. So we just need to keep out the slog.
The crowdfunding is such an interesting model, especially in these days when, you know, there's such a demand that is being created by the corruption of our major institutions in the media and in Hollywood. And I want to ask how that affects your crowdfunding. You guys have been crowdfunding and using that model to success for years. I'm guessing that now it's even in higher demand. Have you found that to be the case? And when you pitch a movie like this one as the story that big media and big Hollywood doesn't want you to hear, is that something that really helps generate interest in the crowdfunding model?
100%, you know, definitely. You know, people don't like when something's hidden from them. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think when we did Gosnell, crowdfunding was a lot newer, a lot fresher for people. So there was a sense of excitement. Now, I mean, there's been a lot of GoFundMes, there's been a lot of projects, and I suppose, you know, it's not as easy as it was, but still we're getting a tremendous response.
And I think it's also a situation where, you know, there's been so much talk about interference in elections and foreign interference in elections and all kinds of stuff like that. One thing that we know for sure that isn't a conspiracy theory of any kind is the fact that there was interference in this election. And the one that we can prove without a doubt is the fact that the media interfered in this election. And by interfered, I mean by suppressing a story that was so relevant, just ahead of the election. Here was, you know, the president, you know, here was the guy, the Democratic, you know, nomination for the president of the United States. His son this laptop turns up with very, very incriminating information about him, about the Biden family, about Joe Biden. And this isn't a story, apparently. And by the way, what's interesting is no one's denied any of these emails. No one said, "Oh, these emails are all made up. This isn't true." No one's saying, they're not saying that. The Biden camp aren't saying that. So this is a true story, and
it's based on a true story.
It's based on a true story. It's what we love to do, by the way. We love to tell true stories.
It's not just the laptop too. Like this is a matter of public record. He was on the board. This is a drug addict, an alcoholic, and this is not a movie to attack a drug addict or an alcoholic, because being Irish, we kind of exported alcoholism.
We almost invented alcoholism.
So we're not going to go down that road. But this guy, this is a guy who joined the Navy late in life, got a waiver, arrived on his first day, was drug tested, and had more cocaine in the system than most people in Bogota. So. And his story was, I was at a bar and I was given a cigarette by two South Africans, and it must have been laced with cocaine.
And the way it is, that cocaine, it's just people are handing it out for free all over the place. I don't know if you've noticed that. We haven't noticed that, but apparently it's a thing. Young people
in Washington,
those young people in Washington, they're handing it out the whole time.
Cocaine,
that cocaine thing,
It's like candy.
Yeah.
There's all these elements of his story which are. Which certainly it's way beyond stretching, the imagination to believe that they're plausible. The idea that
he's admitted that. I mean, he gave an interview with the New Yorker and admitted that. So a lot of this, we're not going into the conspiracy theories.
We're just telling what happened.
Telling what happened, but it's a great story. It's a classic Hollywood story. Actually, if Hollywood had any decency or any imagination
or courage.
It's got. I mean, literally, it's Austin Powers. Literally, it's King Lear. I mean, we told the story to a famous Hollywood director who's a conservative who didn't want to get involved because he wants to work, and he said, ultimately, Hunter Biden hates his father. There's a relationship problem there because why did he not collect the laptop
for a year?
Well, he wasn't the favorite son. Bo was the favorite son. He was Hunter's always trying to prove himself. So this family dynamics with a small f, and then the family, as in, is this a criminal family?
But it's also very much, the idea that, for an audience to watch this guy with this set of behaviors that he has and this, checkered, colorful past, he got a stripper pregnant, denied paternity, had his ass hauled into court, had to admit that, in fact, yes, that it was his child, has never met that child. The grandfather of that child, who is the president of the United States, has never met that child or acknowledged that child. I mean, we're meant to be the fuddy-duddy kind of conservative, moralistic types. We wouldn't dream of that. Our side wouldn't dream of doing such a thing. I mean, it's kind of extraordinary.
Only a progressive can be.
Only a progressive. But here's the guy with all of that in his past. And you have the board of Burisma, an energy company in Ukraine, doing a worldwide executive search, as of course they did, a massive worldwide executive search, months spent in it, double, triple, interviewing people. After that massive, rigorous process, guess what? We're choosing the guy who got the stripper pregnant. We're going to choose the guy who was thrown out of the Navy on the first day because he's got a cocaine problem. That's the guy we need on our board. And, who
has no experience in oil or gas.
No, who's not in the energy business. But there's some magic to do. There's some magic to him. And I think your listeners and viewers know very well what that magic is. What that magic is that inspired a Chinese businessman to give him an $83,000 diamond ring, that inspired another set of Chinese business people to give his family $100,000 spending money, that inspired the mayor of Moscow's wife to give him $3 million. This isn't random. This is not random. There's a pattern here, and there is a common denominator. And the common denominator is who exactly this man is, and his surname is Biden.
So how do you go about, even storyboarding a saga as complicated as this one? It is very convoluted with the details about who was where, when, and Hunter Biden really, he's sort of like Carmen Sandiego. Where in the world is he? So what's the sort of, as you're approaching the gargantuan task of distilling this into a screenplay and into the format of a film, what does that process look like on your end when it comes to telling the Hunter Biden story?
Well, I mean, Hunter's chaotic life is part of the story, actually. If the film is chaotic, it'll reflect Hunter's life, and it'll reflect politics around him. So, don't be afraid, I suppose, to embrace the truth and show the chaos. And if people don't understand where we are in the world or don't understand what's happening, don't worry about it, because Hunter very often didn't understand where he was in the world and didn't understand what was happening. And I'm not making fun of him. That's a reality. He's admitted to that himself. And he's got an autobiography coming out about his addiction in the next few weeks. So, I think the point is, this is a man who very often didn't know where he was. This is a man who lived the most chaotic. I mean, we didn't even talk about him having an affair with his wife's, his brother's widow, whilst he was married, and apparently texting her sister also. I mean,
sexting. There's no end of story here, and I think you're right. I think it's like, how do you form that? And we're working with a great screenwriter who's working on that, and this is what great storytellers love, actually, because in fact we have an abundance of riches here.
Yeah.
And there's also the media aspect. So there's that story and the Biden story, but then there's the media story, which is incredible, which implicates NBC, CNN, and all these places, and Twitter.
It's kind of a reverse all the president's men.
It's exactly
every journalist in the world actively working to thwart a story.
Yeah.
Meeting the guy in the garage, at 2 a.m. to try and thwart the story.
That's right.
Make sure it doesn't get out.
Yeah. So that's that works very well, in a movie. I mean, it's kind of, and it's as Phelim said, it's going to be very entertaining. There's plenty of, and it's going to be colorful and glamorous, actually. He lived the life. He's living the life. He's living around the corner from us here. We live in Venice, and he's living around the corner here. Spending $25,000 a month in rent. The way we do. The way all of us have those kind of rentals, right? Yeah. And as Phelim said, we could throw a crack pipe from here, and we'd hit the house. Basically, we're so close to him here, But so we're not short of color. We're not short of amusement. But I'll tell you one thing: this story packs a big punch, and it's a gut punch, because in the end we realize that the election was stolen, but it was stolen in a very transparent way, actually extremely transparent, by the media interfering to suppress the truth. And that's provable. That's no conspiracy theory. We saw it day by day as the New York Post's Twitter account was closed down on them, for what was it, 14 days in a row or 17 days. Crazy stuff. Like Stalin. This is like China. This is America, the land of the free, the home of the brave. I didn't come here for this. I don't know, you might detect I have a little bit of an accent, but we did not come to this country for this sort of suppression of the truth. And so this is our duty, actually, as immigrants who are doing a job that Americans just won't do, to tell this story.
Yeah.
No, you mentioned you're in Venice and you're familiar, of course, with the industry. You said you're talking to a director recently who's conservative but wants to still be able to work. How has the last few years impacted the culture in Hollywood? Has it really started to close more and more doors, or has the sort of ridiculous and absurdity of some of these crazy standards nudged more people, like, say, a Gina Carano, to, talk to you? I mean, you've gotten some big names in recent history: Christy Swanson, Dean Cain. What are you finding this when you take the temperature of Hollywood? How are you finding it these days?
It's worse than when we first came here. I mean, look, when we first came here, we walked into Sony and had meetings with people.
That's right.
We were with agencies having meetings.
That's right.
Now, it's a marketing ploy by these companies to say we won't work with that people.
Yeah, we won't even talk.
It used to be a marketing ploy saying we're meeting all sorts of people. And we did this little bit of conservative project over there. Look at us. That was their marketing. That was their kind of saying we look, we care. Now their way of saying we care is we actually fired those people without cause. So it's worse than it was 10 years ago when we first came to Hollywood.
And it's even worse. I mean, there's been like a few extraordinary stories that we've highlighted on our podcast, like the fact that, for example, Planned Parenthood admit, and it was a huge story, I think it was in the New York Times, they have a woman, they pay her a lot of money, and she works full-time. This is not a part-time job. She works full-time with screenwriters and TV creators to get the Planned Parenthood message into movies, into screenplays. into comedy, into everything. And it's a job. And we also know, for example, that there's the environmentalists have exactly the same model. They have people who work full time getting the climate hysteria narrative into screenplays. And I think our question is, and it's kind of tragic in some ways, but it's an opportunity for us that the conservative movement are very good. They have a donor class who are giving money to all kinds of things, but who don't support the arts. And when I say that, they do support, by the way, the Lincoln Center. They do support the theater. They do support these institutions that then put on exhibitions, movies, plays, hating on America.
To tell them they're evil.
To tell those people that the money they made, to put that extra wing on the Lincoln Center, that was made by blood money. But they took the money, they built the wing, they have the performance, they have the ballet coming from wherever, paid for by these conservatives. And I suppose our question and our demand, what we're doing now is saying basically, look, we need to be in the entertainment space. We are in the entertainment space. We're literally it. We've made plays, we've made movies, we have done, we do podcasts, because that's the space we need to occupy, and we need to be entertaining people, because people won't always be reading political screeds. People won't always be reading, journals. They won't be reading that. They sit back in the evening and kind of have a beer and watch the TV and laugh. And, it's an incredible situation that we're in right now. If you think of what we've just told you about Hunter Biden, and, we didn't even tell you the story about bicycles. We'll tell you the story about bicycles in a minute. But the idea that this isn't fodder for SNL every week, to do a scene with, basically they should open every SNL with Hunter Biden lying in the bath with the crack pipe. It's an iconic image nearly at this point. And yet, no late night comedy routine has been done about that. How is that even possible? This is the president of the United States now. This is his son. This is the background. And again, just to mention bicycles, because as I just said, so here at one point in his career, in his checkered, colorful career, Hunter Biden, needed to go to rehab. Fair enough. Good idea. He's walking into the rehab. He meets bicycles, so named bicycles because she's a homeless woman who always travels with a bicycle. Yeah, you win the prize there. And instead of going to the rehab, he goes and lives with bicycles for 3 months. So that's the kind of guy you want on the board of your energy company in Ukraine, making very serious decisions.
This is a great story. I mean, the story tells itself, right? The problem is, I think you alluded to it earlier, keeping all the stuff out of the script. Don't overload the script.
Too much stuff.
Yeah, so we're trying to do that, to make it a story.
The best of. We'll make it the best of.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of the sort of mind-boggling things about all of this is that, and I felt similar when you guys tackled FBI Lovebirds. These stories are, as you said, an abundance of riches. These are things that Hollywood should salivate over and should want desperately to be able to tell these stories. And I wonder, if you think that this new crowdfunding model, or that conservatives, as they are starting to talk more and more about the so-called culture war and to pay more and more attention to it, do you think there's sort of a feasible infrastructure that can be built with crowdfunding and redirecting some of the resources that the conservative donor class has, so that there is a landing pad for people like Gina Carano or Christy Swanson, who have, heterodox views on whatever it is, whether they're conservative or not, but now they can sort of come and make art outside the Hollywood bubble? Obviously, we're not there yet, but do you see that as something that's plausible in the near future?
I mean, it's possible, right? But one of the big problems is distribution. So we can, it is possible to fund projects. Like we've funded, 10 projects now, like several plays, FBI Lovebirds. We did Ferguson in New York and Los Angeles. We did Obamagate. We did Gosnell. We're doing this. I mean, we're probably some of the most successful crowdfunders on the planet, but distribution is a problem for a big project, for a movie like this. So that's the missing link, is you can now hopefully get them made. But I mean, we're so far behind. I mean, HBO did the Comey Rule.
Yeah.
Which is
Showtime
did the Comey Rule, which was a 2-part miniseries costing $40 million about a conspiracy theory that had been debunked well before the show came out. It was debunked as it was being filmed. And you know,
star-studded cast,
and they spent another 40 million promoting it, you know, and here we are scrabbling around for
$2.5 million
to
tell this extremely significant story.
So the left are spending billions.
In every election cycle, the left are spending billions in the entertainment space, on TV, on music, on poetry, on theatre, constantly spending money, making these products, getting these messages out. And on our side, there is no money at all, like none, $0 being spent to match that. As Phelim said, the Comey rule, as I said, you know, you got Planned Parenthood, they got people working on scripts here on a day-to-day basis, you know.
You do Law and Order
every episode of Law and Order, every episode now of every procedural. I don't know if you guys like those kind of hospital procedurals. We love that sort of stuff at night. NBC, those kind of big tent shows. And guess what you find in each one of them? There's a constant social justice warrior message. There's a euthanasia message. There's a trans message. There's a capitalists are evil message. Yeah. And that does have an effect. That's a huge audience that is affected by that constant drip, 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 drip effect of liberal, talking points.
With all of the craziness that's happening in the political arena right now, and you guys have tackled so much of it. I mean, FBI Lovebirds in and of itself, just reading the transcripts of those Peter Strzok, Lisa Page messages, what is it about the Hunter Biden story that made you want to focus a film on telling that saga? Because you've used various other formats, and why is it that like right now you're really interested in Hunter? I think to a lot of people that's probably obvious, but you guys do tackle a lot of different projects and matters. What is it about this one right now?
I suppose there are no theaters now. I mean, theaters are a very good way to get a story across because it's very real and very dramatic, especially verbatim theater, which we specialize in. And just for your listeners, verbatim theater is when you take court cases or inquiries and you use the actual words that people say. Like for Ferguson, we did the grand jury testimonies, 15 eyewitness accounts, a minute-by-minute breakdown of the death of Michael Brown. And of course, the truth was stranger than the fiction that the media had printed. So, and it shows you how powerful it is that during rehearsals, 9 of the actors walked out because they couldn't handle the truth. When we went to do FBI Lovebirds in DC, the theater venue canceled the booking because they didn't want, the truth to be shown there. So, I mean, theater is very powerful. There are no theaters at the moment. Who knows when theaters will reopen? But I think this has movie quality.
Yes, yeah, it's very cinematic. I mean, when you think about Strzok and Page, it was quite domestic. It was quite small. They're sending text messages to each other from their phones in their homes or at work. Whereas this is all over the world. This is the Ukraine. It's China. It's big screen stuff, and it's it's lap dances and strip bars. It's quite colorful and it's a big story. And I suppose the most powerful person on the planet Earth right now is Joe Biden. And this tells a story about a very, very, very serious story about Joe Biden. It tells a very, very serious story about the world's media. The world's media, actually, not only the media here in the United States. That's very important. And it's very important that it gets out and to a very, very big audience. So by having it available, and we're going to have it available online for everyone to see, it's gonna be, there'll be no barriers to entry, so people will get to hear this story. They'll enjoy it. They'll laugh, they'll cry, but in the end, they'll have that really. They're going to learn something really terrible that happened here, and hopefully it won't happen again, and hopefully it will help them when they make a decision about how to vote in the next election.
What's it like casting Hunter Biden?
Very difficult, actually. Well, actually. It would have been very difficult. Only, I mean, there is one perfect person, and we're in negotiations with him, and we're not breaching any confidentiality. He's actually talked about it. Lawrence Fox, who's a British actor, he was. People might know him from the TV series Lewis, or you might know him as Lord Palmerston. He played Lord Palmerston in the Netflix series Victoria. But he's a brilliant actor. His uncle was Edward Fox, who played every British officer in every British war movie.
Yes. And he's a bit of a look for Hunter, actually. He's kind of a very good look for it. And yeah, we're talking to him. A slightly complicated issue because he's running for mayor of London right now.
He's just dropped out of acting he's dropped out of acting to run for mayor of London on a free speech culture ticket, actually, fighting back against the culture wars. So whilst we wish him all the best in his election, we really hope that he doesn't win.
Yes.
So that he can be Hunter Biden.
And come with us to Serbia, where we're planning to shoot in the summer.
Yes, we're going to shoot it in Serbia because that doubles as the Ukraine.
That's fair enough. Are you bringing in, do you know to the extent that Joe Biden will be a character in this film? And okay, so yes.
Very much so. Very much so.
And we're in talks with somebody very interesting for that part.
Yes, but we can't.
Let's just say that for right now.
Yes, let's just say we're in talks with an Oscar-winning actor about that part.
Yes.
And they are very keen, but we can't go into any more details.
No, we can't.
That's just too much.
That's a lot of details.
Too many details. But, the screenwriter does not want his name used at this stage because he fears the hate that he will get. Actors, I mean, I've written to a number of actors and agents about this, just feeling them out. And somebody says, I need to work. I'm not doing I did some political stuff, but I'm not doing political stuff now. It's too toxic. I need to work. Another guy said, look, if I do this, I'll never work again. And then he goes, although I would be the most famous actor in the world for a day or two if I took the role, so, but so they all love these good roles, but they're just afraid.
But we had challenges when we were even casting, Gosnell back in the day, because, for similar reasons that people didn't want to, some people didn't want to be involved in a project that would tell the truth about abortion or tell the truth about this awful story that sheds an incredibly negative light on, on Planned Parenthood, on that industry, that abortion industry. But we quite like a challenge, by the way, and but this is a big one, and I think this is the biggest project we've ever done. So, as people turn up, and people are turning up all the time and helping us out by donating at mysonhunter.com. It's very it's very impressive. People are great, actually. People are great in this country because they realize how important this story is, and they're willing to. They're willing to back us again, and it's wonderful, and we are going to do them proud, and we're going to do anyone proud who supports us, because it's really important that we tell this story.
I wonder, something I've sensed in recent years is that sort of the Trump era made something click in the perhaps conservative establishment's mind. It's an argument that you guys have been making for years, and some people have been making for years, that you cannot sort of just totally ignore the entertainment sector. You have to find a way to break in. It seemed like that kind of started to finally click when the host of Celebrity Apprentice became the president of the United States. Yeah. Do you sense that there's a growing appetite on the right to back projects in the entertainment sphere?
No.
Interesting.
No, but I think what we find we find that individuals are fabulous. So we've talked to individuals who've been sending in money are fabulous and who do get it. Ordinary people who just get it. Yeah. But the much bigger donor class, I think they still think in the traditional way, in a very traditional way. As we say in every election cycle, we're already billions of dollars behind because of the entertainment space. Because at night, people come home from work, they're tired, they put on the TV, they watch 90 Day Fiancé. That's what people do in their spare time. They watch Law and Order. They watch Law and Order on repeat, and every episode of that is propaganda and is teaching leftist thinking, and it's great for them. It's great for the left because it really, all the heavy lifting has already been done for them. So on the trans issue, all that heavy lifting has been done by constantly having trans characters in everything. It's everywhere now, and all this, all of that stuff, everything that they want to do. Capitalists are bad. All immigrants are fabulous. Illegal immigrants, there's no such thing. It's not even true. They're just all saints, and they all want to come here and work really hard and be all law-abiding. They just want to come illegally. Everything is twisted around. We're wrong about everything. Christians are the worst. You watch a Law and Order episode and they introduce somebody who has a Bible, and the minute you see it, you think, aha, we have the serial killer. I saw the guy, he talked about prayer. We now know who killed the guy, and it actually spoils it.
Spoils because Law and Order used to be a thing where there was a twist at the end. And
you wouldn't be sure, you'd never know who did it.
But now you see the middle-aged white man with the Bible, and you go,
aha, we have our murderer. And substitute for the guy with the Bible, you substitute anything. A guy who runs an oil company. We are looking at a mass murderer here now. And it's incredible because if you think about the oil and gas sector, 1 million people work in the oil and gas sector in the United States of America. These are hardworking people who keep the lights on and who saved Texas. If it wasn't for natural gas, by the way, hundreds, maybe thousands of people would have died in Texas. But natural gas, took up the slack when the windmills froze. That story, but that's a great story. That's a great story about fossil fuels. It's a great story about the energy industry. Are you going to hear it anytime soon? No, not likely. What you are going to hear is anyone involved with oil and gas, anyone in that sector is evil. Anyone involved in wind power, well, they're basically, for sure, they saved the child. They didn't do the murder. They didn't steal from the bank, the guy who's involved in the wind industry. It's that, but they're doing this all the time. And by the way, it really matters.
And that brings me to the question of, that's an interesting example because it's not an overtly political show. It's not The West Wing. It's not Veep. Yeah. And it's interesting how those messages always seem to get snuck subtly into apolitical art. So is that also a really important part of your project and the conservative project to sort of take back culture, getting those messages out of apolitical art, getting over the politicization of absolutely everything and always towards the left? Is that also part of what needs to happen?
Well, no, actually, in a way, actually, yes and no, actually, in a way, because what we're doing is we're actually just telling the story.
Right.
We're not putting a spin on it. We're not spinning anything here. All of this happened. And you know how we know it happened? We know it happened because Hunter Biden said it happened. This is from the mouth of himself, right? This is his own emails that haven't been denied. This is his own interview with the New Yorker magazine in 2019. This is stuff that we know. So from them, no one's spinning anything here. I mean, the contrast, I suppose, when you think about Law and Order, is they're making stuff up.
Yeah.
They make stuff up. They take a story like they took the story of the ClimateGate, of what happened in ClimateGate.
And made the person who leaked the emails the killer, But also, one thing you can say, in Law and Order is, as they become more political, the story
less and less entertaining.
It's unwatchable. Funny, I happened to look at some early things with Lenny Briscoe and Vincent D'Onofrio.
They were great.
Law and Order. They were great. They were funny. The more political they become, the less funny they become.
Yeah, it's like an interesting exercise. A couple of years ago, Phelim and I watched from its inception to the end, the whole of the NYPD Blue show, which was back in the day, and it was way before political correctness. It's a really great procedural, a great, crime show.
Great people.
Great people. The whole thing is great. And, you just never know who the killer is. Like, you just never know who the bad guy is.
Also, there's no lecturing, and there's nobody getting offended and nobody getting upset because somebody did a microaggression against them. It's really, it's really, when you see that in Law and Order now, you just turn off because it's just, I hate you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, it's, someone should go back and watch some of the early Law and Orders and see the lack of politics and the humor. God, it was so funny.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
Lenny Briscoe was really funny.
And now it's just a humorless.
But it actually, by saying that, actually, as we talk through this, I mean, it's an amazing opportunity for conservatives. There's an amazing opportunity here because the more woke the entertainment space becomes, the more unwatchable it is. It becomes unwatchable. I mean, everyone likes entertainment, but you don't like being preached to, and you know it, and you can feel it. You're watching, like we were watching a procedural the other night, a medical procedural, and they snuck in a horrible euthanasia story that didn't even make sense. It didn't make sense at all.
Yes.
The woman involved, the older woman involved, was nothing wrong with her. Nothing. She was just old. That's all. And she wasn't even that old. And the end of the show is, we're going to help her to commit euthanasia, to commit suicide. This hospital.
And her daughter comes around. And
her daughter comes around to thinking that's the right thing to do. Isn't this lovely? And that's how it ends. So people are getting more and more, I think, turned off by that. I mean, I would have put up with TV and bad TV and fun TV for years until now, where it's unwatchable. There's an opening for us.
And now we've lost The Bachelor.
And we've lost.
Yeah. It's gone forever.
Nothing sacred. But people won't like, and by the way, what's happened with The Bachelor, by the way, people don't like that. People don't like, it's way too, suddenly this isn't funny at all. This isn't fun at all. And the guy who lost his job, he's a good guy. This guy didn't do anything wrong. And people see that. Ordinary people, common sense people see that. So I'm saying, and I think we're both saying that, there's an amazing opportunity for conservatives here, because conservatives actually, we only want to tell the truth. We don't want to spin anything. We want to tell just the truth about the world, because we have the truth on our side. The stories are true. Work hard, get married, don't cheat on your spouse, bring up children to have respect. And you know what? You'll be things are going to work out well for you. You're going to be happy. And the alternative, the kind of the very leftist, hard leftist, extremist version of how to live doesn't work. It doesn't make people happy. It makes people very damaged. And we're getting to see that. We're seeing these, you open up the newspaper every day, read what's going on online, and it's frightening. So we actually have the fun story of how to live and how to love. And we should be telling it from the rooftops. And we should be telling that energy story. I hadn't even thought about that. But that energy story, that story of what happened in Texas, my God, I'd love to make a movie about that. That's my next movie I'd love to make. Because they nearly wiped out thousands of people in Texas, by the way, because of leftist ideology and idiocy with renewable energy and making that grid so vulnerable as they did. I mean, that's kind of a side issue from what we're talking about right now, but that's a movie. That's a movie. Children died there. There was an 11-year-old child died in Texas because of energy, because he froze to death. People froze to death in Texas, one of the richest energy places on the planet Earth. And it happened because of stories that were told that are lies about the reliability of renewable energy. I mean, this is very serious stuff that is being completely ignored. And we're not telling those stories. And they're good stories. These are good stories. These are great stories.
Yeah, absolutely. And that completely underscores your point about the opening being there. So if listeners want to take advantage of that opening, they can go to mysonhunter.com. Phelim and Anne, thank you so much for your time today.
I really appreciate it.
Yes,
thank you.
I mean, we're overwhelmed by the support, but it's a long way between where we are and 2.5 million. So please, mysonhunter.com. And
give what you can.
And we look forward. We'll come back and tell you when we've.
Oh yeah, when we hit our next milestone, we'll come back and tell you about it. Thank you so much.
Look forward to that. Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to another edition of the Federalist Radio Hour. I'm Emily Jashinsky. We'll be back soon with more. Until then, be lovers of freedom and anxious for the fray.